Hey, Doris. How's it going?
Hey, Regina, it's going very well. How are you?
I'm doing great. We have my friend Gayathri with us, and I'm super excited. We worked together for several years and have become reacquainted. And I invited her to talk to us a little bit about conscious leadership. Gayathri, you want to tell us about yourself and tell us what conscious leadership is?
Yes. Thank you, Regina, for having me on board. I'm so excited to talk about this topic that I'm so passionate about. And before we do that, let me give a little bit of introduction of who I am to your listeners. So I'm Gayathri Rhiddi, and I'm the founder of Realize to Win. I have over 2 decades of corporate leadership, and in that time frame, I was also coaching leaders. And so today, I'm an executive coach, and I coach leaders across multiple industries and organizations. So with that comes a lot of lessons and a lot of passion for the mind. And that's where conscious leadership has come into my life, and it's become the space that I spend most of my time with. With what my personal life and professional life has taught me, what I've learned is my work is turning inner clarity into visible behaviors. That is how you regulate yourself, how you relate to others, and how you decide with clarity, especially when stakes are high. And so I have developed this model called the SIRE Model, which is the blueprint of conscious leadership. And this model is to help leaders know their own inner state and choose a response and express their values that can improve their leadership impact overarchingly.
So, if you would describe conscious leadership in maybe 10 words, what might that be?
I would say conscious leadership is, as a leader, when you're creating certain conditions for clarity, conditions for trust and psychological safety, conditions for pacing and capacity for yourself and your team, for decision hygiene is what I call it, which is making decisions with discernment, and closure and follow through. So when you have a combination of this as a result of how you're navigating your leadership state, you would have conscious leadership.
Love that. And I think what I'm hearing a little bit, if I had to sum it up in one word, it would be present.
Yes, spot
To
on.
be
Yes,
present.
absolutely. It's presence of mind. And this is something that I definitely work with whoever I'm working with to focus on and come back to. Presence is the felt experience of somebody being fully attuned to themselves and to others, and in the moment that you're in. So the SIRE model, if I can give you guys a brief outline of it, is essentially few different components that are interacting with each other. One is self-awareness, how self-aware you are without being self-absorbed. Self-inspiration is your true inner compass, your values, your inner inspiration. Your self-regulation, as in no matter what's happening around you, how centered you are, which is where the mindsets and mindfulness come to play. And then your self-expression, it is how you articulate your inner world to the outer world. And there is an ecosystem that's surrounding all of it, which is our self-reflection. So that is the nervous system of the whole cycle that's feeding information in and out of each other.
Okay, I could see that because you need to be able to reflect to build awareness,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
You need to be able to reflect to regulate. You need to be able to reflect in order to express in a way that connects with other people. And there was the second one, you said self-awareness, then
Inspiration.
self-inspiration.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. I love how, and like I can see it,
Mhm.
right? I can see the reflection kind of coming all around this
across it, yeah.
and how that is almost a cosmos in itself and as you're discerning, as you're making decisions, as you're having conversations,
Yeah.
it all comes together. I love that.
Remembering it through the acronym SIRE
Yes.
is wonderful. That makes it a lot easier to remember. I did have to write it
Yes.
down. The awareness, inspiration, regulation, and expression.
And you touched on this, Doris, about presence. I love that you caught that on so fast because presence is the core of the SIRE model. Without self-awareness, there's no presence. And without self-regulation, presence cannot hold or cannot be sustained. And without self-inspiration, presence is going to lose clarity. And without self-expression, presence remains silent and invisible to the world and to yourself. The presence of mind is what we are working towards building in leaders so they can be conscious leaders.
I love it. And I love that Doris brought in presence.
Yes.
I want to bring in another word that really appeals to me in this moment with the SIRE model is intentionality.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And intentionality, again, comes with that consciousness. It's where you are very purposeful. That self-inspiration directly touches that intentionality space, is where when you're operating as a leader, you're, again, the level of accountability in itself goes higher, right? So it is where you're not only creating optimal conditions for you to be your best, you're taking on accountability to share that with who you have around you. So that self-inspiration becomes so critical. And that's when I think about a pattern of the leaders that I coach, that's one of the areas that I spend quite a bit of time on, is where I find the most disconnect is where they operate a certain way and they value something else. And it is when they're reminded of what they're truly valuing is when they start seeing even the worthiness of the effort to shift.
I touch on another important word, accountability, that you just said. And I'd love to know on the accountability part. So you as a coach, and I'm also a coach, and Regina is a coach, and I know that accountability is a big part of what we offer as coaches. But when you're not in the room, who is holding this leader accountable? Are they allowing their peers? Are they allowing from a 360-degree view people above them, beside them, and under them to hold them accountable for the presence that they want to reflect to their teams, to their leaders, to their organizations?
Yes. Spot on. To give you guys a little bit of insight to me in that space, the entire genesis of creating my organization as Realize to Win and my podcast as Catalyze Yourself is all swimming in the same theme, which is the entire way our world is responding to us and the way we respond to the world. There is one singular variable that's making the change, which is ourselves. So Realize to Win came out of the mindset and thinking of, okay, there are opportunities that come our ways. There are aha moments, realizations that'll come into our lives, lessons, wisdom that pass our way. What are we going to do about it in that moment of realization? And the path we choose to take in that moment is what is going to take it to our win. In the same token, Catalyze Yourself, my podcast came out of the point that we are making right now, which is the whole point of how we become our best is not about the rest of the world. It is how we are creating our inner world in a way that will allow us to navigate what comes our way, which may come to us external world. So it's very much the entire perspective that I bring is to help whoever I work with is start looking inwards, which is not an easy journey or a journey that everybody wants to take. It's a worthwhile journey and a vulnerable journey that absolutely creates a shift that is priceless, if you ask me.
So it's your role as a coach to help folks with their inner self because we can't control what's out here. We can't control everything that's around us and outside of us, but we can control the balance within our own self. And that's what I see the SIRE model is. In fact, I don't know if you have a graphic for this. I bet you do because I know you well enough. But here's what I see. I see a circle with a cross in it. And then each of the different parts of the model have an area have to be balanced.
Yes, it has to be balanced. Yes, Regina, you know me. And I haven't touched on another piece within that. So you're right. There's a circle. You're spot on.
I know
for all of us listening. And the circle has been divided in quadrants. Regina was spot on. And I've placed all four, but they're all interacting and talking to each other. But right in the middle of it, I placed the behavioral shift support system, which is a triangle where I have three different lines. It's a triangle, right? It's got three spaces. The first line is Halt. the second one is rise, and the third one is shift. And I integrated that behavioral intervention piece in there because when we are going through the journey of coming to ourselves and coming into our presence, the first thing that all of us have to recognize, it's not a perfect journey. Why? We are humans. Why? Our nervous systems have been conditioned to operate a certain way for so many years. And it is not a switch we flip and tomorrow we just turn into this brand new person, right? So we have to give ourselves grace and we have to give ourselves compassion. And when we do falter and a stress scenario creates such a massive condition that our nervous system flips back to an old way, we just have to see it, recognize it, and shift. So HALT is would you guys be interested in what the acronym is stand for?
Yes, sure. This is, and you said in this triangle, it's HALT, rise and shift,
yes,
or HALT, recognize and shift.
HALT, rise and shift.
Okay, so I did write it down right. That's
but
just fascinating.
HALT
and before you go in, because I think this is really, really important.
Yes.
This is a behavioral intervention.
Yes.
This is your method, or this is the method that we can all use
Yes.
when we are at a behavioral choice.
Yes.
We have choices to make.
Yes.
We can go left or right. We can go up or down.
Mm-hmm.
This is your behavioral intervention.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and when I say that, I do want to say it's a way of retraining our nervous system. So our nervous system has been gaining lessons from birth, like the moment we are born and prior to that, because through our genetics and however else we look at it, there's a lot of ways information is already coded in ourselves when we come out, right? And some of them are very much poised for survival, for safety, for protection. So if we think of our nervous system's primary reason of existing to communicate in a way that keeps us safe, then we can truly know that, hey, no matter what we are doing, somewhere along the way, our nervous system thought of that pattern as safety. And that doesn't make it wrong, right, indifferent, or something worth judgment. As a matter of fact, I'm a coach that absolutely recommends we shift away from judgment as much as possible and move towards compassion, right? But with that, what it helps us see is a nervous system is something we can retrain. Just as our neuroplasticity of our brain, our nervous system is constantly learning something new, but we need to give it reinforcement to learn that new pathway because it's easier to go into an older way of repeating an older pattern.
There were a couple of things that both of you said that I want to touch on. Most recent, you just said judgment. One of the things, because I find that I'm kind of bad about that. But when I find myself moving into judgment, I try a breathing exercise and I breathe in empathy and I breathe out judgment. Breathe in empathy, breathe out judgment. And that calms me down so much that the judgment seems to just go away. And I'm able to bring in the empathy that I know that I need and get rid of the judgment that I know I don't need.
So, Doris, that what you're practicing is intentionality. You're doing a couple of things. One is the way our neurons are, our nervous system is set up and the way our brain operates. You want collaboration between the emotional centers and your discernment centers, your prefrontal cortex. However, both of them like to lead. So depending on who you give preferential treatment to, one takes over the other. The ideal state of a mind is where they're collaborating with each other, as in the prefrontal is slowed down enough that to acknowledge the emotional signal, and the emotion knows that the discernment got it, right? So there needs to be a certain level of trust that happens within our own selves between these two centers. And of course, there's that other element of consciousness that we can touch on also. But the point that I was sharing with you, Doris, is I love your practice because it's touching multiple components. One is you're reinforcing safety to your nervous system by saying, no, hold on. But the second thing you're also doing, you're shifting from emotional to tactical. Our physical senses has a different space in our brain focused on it, right? So when you immediately focus on your breath, your emotional centers go down. You're focused now on physical, tactical things. So breath is an absolutely wonderful way of shifting focus from emotion to something else. And while you're doing that, you're intentionally telling your mind, entire mind, which is your cognition, emotion, and consciousness, and your nervous system, talking to all of them, that hold, my priority is not judgment, it is empathy.
Yes. And I also know that doing something intentionally is a learned practice by me. And Regina, you used an interesting word earlier. You used the word intervention, behavioral intervention. And when I think of intervention, the first thing I think of is someone that's behaving in a way that other people have to come in and help them out. So you have an alcoholic or someone that is taking drugs, and you're bringing in an intervention.
Or a hoarder.
Or a hoarder, and you're intervening and saying, we love you and we need to fix this. But what's interesting about that is behavior intervention or a behavior shift, it still has to come from within. It has to be something that I as a leader or I as a person am willing to do. You come to me and say, oh, you need to stop taking drugs or you need to stop hoarding, and I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. It still has to come from within. So that breathing exercise I just did is a way that shows, okay, I'm conscious of bad behavior. I need to somehow get rid of that bad behavior or those bad thoughts. My question is, at what point does a leader come to you, Gayathri, and say, I need that intervention or I need that help because I am not able to do it on my own to make that behavioral shift so that I move into conscious leadership?
What is very interesting, Doris, is it's not necessarily where a leader comes to me at the time where they recognize there's an intervention. Typically, what happens is there is accumulation of symptoms. So it's usually, oh, my team is not solution-oriented. My team is toxic, or I feel like I'm in a toxic environment. I'm burned out. So there's other things that are coming in as a symptom of what could be lack of regulation, lack of how we are setting the expectations and boundaries and how we are operating in the world, right? So it does not necessarily come in as, hey, I need an intervention. It's usually a self-recognition of, I need to work on this. And you're spot on, Doris. And intervention is an interesting word because it indicates, as you said, somebody else coming in. But regardless of what came in, the only way a shift is going to happen if the person decides they're going to make that shift. So it's an interesting word. It's almost a catalytic word, but it's not the one that gets the result. The person is the one who has to shift and make the result.
Intentional self-intervention.
Yes, very much so.
It's like, that's like the short of it, right?
Yes.
You've got to be intentional.
Yes.
You have to want to do it.
Yes.
You have to think to do it. You have to be aware.
Yes.
It has to be conscious.
Yes.
In order to do it.
Yes.
You have to want to do it, which is where the self comes in, and the intervention is making that change.
Yes.
I love it. The breathing is such a good one. And I've used some other ones. I'm very tactile.
Yeah.
For me, when my emotional center of my brain is just going nuts and I need to get back to that prefrontal cortex, I will rub my fingers together. But usually I actually scratch my nails on my fingertips gently.
Yeah.
I like the way it feels.
Yeah.
I've done this all my life. I didn't realize that this is what I was doing when I was younger.
Yes.
But you can't hold those two things at the same time. You can't hold the emotional turmoil and the experience of a physical sensation, whether that's breathing or you're rubbing your fingers together or whatever. And so what a great way to shift from being overtaken by your emotions and getting back into SIRE model, right? Being more self-aware and digging in to the inside and what's actually happening there.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one more point that I do want to make, Regina, because even that physical tactile, if we lose our intentionality, can become just a habit. I know all of us know where if somebody is anxious or if they're stressed, there are stress tactile behaviors too. And where somebody might just do certain activities from it.
Bite their nails.
Yes, with their body, which is not necessarily utilizing that tactile activity with intention. So what
Because it's unconscious.
Yes, and what that ends up doing is it now just becomes a tell on your part. Like everybody knows you're stressed because you're pulling on your hair. It has to be, it all comes down to purposeful, conscious behavior where you're self-aware and you are recognizing you're behaving a certain way and you know your thresholds of when it's gone past. So it's very subtle behaviors that we're doing, if at all, that is for us, not for the world to see. It's for us to know. Coming back to the halt, the triangle, the halt, you touched on it, Regina. You said, did you say recognize? Yes, I did say recognize for halt, because halt is where you recognize what is happening. So H stands for hesitation, and then A stands for avoidance, L stands for lack, and T stands for tiredness. So no matter what is happening around us, there is a reason we are hesitating. There's a reason we are avoiding. There's a reason why we think with a scarcity mindset. And there's a reason we feel just exhausted and don't want to do it. So the first step is knowing you have reached that state. So recognize, are you in hesitation? Are you in avoidance? Are you having a scarcity mindset? Or are you just exhausted? And that is the first step of that intervention. And that is when you recognize, okay, I'm hesitating. Then you move into, okay, why? So it's truly recognizing what is it I'm hesitating, but what is my inspiration? What's my intention? So RISE starts with recognition, intention, senses, and evaluation. So what that is, okay, I recognize that I'm hesitating, but my intention, my inspiration is to make an impact. So let me come back to my senses and let me evaluate my next step. So it's essentially creating a step-by-step for our mind and nervous system to learn a new way of behavior. Instead of something happened, I'm exhausted, I can't think, I'm hesitating, I'm almost catatonic, I don't know how to move. So this is a way of giving, okay, you recognize it, but what was your intention? And let's touch your senses, get your mind to the right space, let your brain shift to the right centers of focus, and let's evaluate our next step. And then we shift. And shift is where our inner alignment is followed through. So it's where before you do anything, you stop, you evaluate, you have a direction, you stop, and then you highlight what it is that you want to do, you integrate it, you flow into that behavior, and then finally, you trust yourself. You have to trust the process and you trust yourself. And that's how you shift.
So it probably takes people a while to do this. I mean, it's detailed. There is a lot here. And so my guess is that people are working with you and you are practicing this together. You are co-practicing this model as they're working through some of their challenges, and you're helping them self-serve this model so eventually they can do it on their own.
Yes.
Is that a good guess?
There's two parts to it. One, there are all kinds of minds out there, right? That includes the mind that wants to know exactly what each step is, and those minds who just give me the high level things that I need to do. So for those minds who just want to know, give me the high level 3 steps, I have halt, rise, and shift. Halt, stop, figure out where you're at, rise out of it,
That's right.
and shift. And then there are those of us who can fall into a spectrum of detail. Some of us want a little bit, some of us want a lot more. So I have tried to think through what that looks like for all spectrums.
Wow.
I instantly think about the disc model and the D in the disc model. They just want the 3.
Kinds of minds.
They want the 3. The C, the conscientious priority in the disc model, they want the details. They're very analytical, research-based. They want all the details. Very interesting. So
if I tell those individuals, you just hold, rise, and shift, they'll be like, but what does that mean? So I can be very clear about, now you stop. What are you thinking about? What did you decide? What was your evaluation or result? Okay, now you highlight that, you integrate that into your behavior or flow into that behavior. and then you trust yourself. That is a sequence of behaviors that can be repeated.
Oh, it is so simple and it is so complicated and it is so beautiful all in the same moment. It is holding two things to be true in the same moment. The halt, rise, and shift. You're right. So simple. So simple. But if you want to go deep
You-
and you want to go through every type of emotion and experience and movement that you could, you have that in that model too. It's like genius. I have to tell you, Gayathri, I am like blown away by this model. It's
Thank you.
beautiful.
It's coming out of my passion. Regina, you know this about me. I am so fascinated by the human mind.
Yes,
And
I know.
it's just so fascinating to me that the same exact moment is seen so many different ways by so many different people. And there's no right, wrong, or indifferent, even though we are all conditioned to see right, wrong, and indifferent. And so that tends to make us think of perfection, and we think of, oh, this is the way somebody thinks like me, and therefore that is safe. Somebody who does not think like me is not safe. There's so many ways of training that our nervous system, mind, and body have received throughout generations and cultures. And now that cultures are moving across the world, it's all just a mishmash of it. Yeah, I'm just fascinated by it. But when you distill it all down, there is a simpler way of looking at it. And that really does answer all these different elements. And neuroscience in itself is so fascinating. But if there's anything really, all of it is fascinating to me. But the biggest part is the neuroplasticity part, which is our brain does not stop growing ever. It is capable of growing. There may be certain centers that max out, but the utilization of it and the nervous system pathways and the synergetic connections between our neurons, it's infinite. We decide how much it needs to grow and how far and how long.
One of the things that I found really interesting about neuropathways
Mhm.
was that your negative neuropathways, so the pathways that are attached to negative emotions, grow faster and stronger
Yeah.
than your positive
Mhm.
connections.
Yeah, there's another.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating in one way, and there's another fascinating group of studies that have shown that people who live longer don't have less amount of those negative thinking, less negative mindset. So even though it can grow fast, it's not growing you towards health, well-being, long life. This is what makes our entire being, our system so fascinating is, yes, what you fuel will grow. Yes. And there are certain pathways that'll grow faster and easier because it is inherently easier to make the choices of, I'm not going to do anything about it. And it is a harder pathway to say, nope, I learned something that, however I learned it, let's leave that without judgment. I'm where I'm at. I want to learn a new way of operating so I can be effective for myself and the world. That journey ain't going to be easy. It's going to be one where you're going to have to give yourself grace. You have to constantly be intentional. You have to be self-aware. You have to keep searching for inspiration. You have to validate every action you do is aligned with your inspiration. You have to constantly be ensuring that you're regulating and how you express yourself to the world is in attune with all of it. So that is a special kind of moving through the world.
I think that is a fascinating observation. And I was listening to another speaker this morning, and I'm in the process of writing my book. And before we hit record on this podcast, I was sharing that I couldn't stop writing on Friday. And I spent about 2 hours writing about some of my history. And I know that I was dwelling on the negative part of the past, but I realized it's because of those things that I had to overcome that I am the person that I am today. And I think that if you are able to look at the challenges that you had to overcome in your life, you wind up growing as a better person. You have more success. Rather than looking at failure as the end all, you look at failure as, I just learned something. And being able to take that learning experience and grow from it will make you a better person. I believe very much that that positive mindset, that positive thinking will help you not only become a better and more successful person, but also a healthier person. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't see doctors. Unfortunately, my mom believed that the power of positive thinking could cure her cancer, which that is going a little too far. But I do believe that the power of prayer, the power of positive thinking can help us overcome even some of that negative energy that's causing sickness in our bodies.
Well, it rewires. It actually
Mhm.
rewires your brain
Yes.
from the negative to the positive, and it connects those neural pathways together.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
point that you made, Doris, not a thing in extreme is a good thing. That includes
Mhm.
over dependence on positivity. Because if you become so dependent on positivity, then you're going to not be acting as needed based on what the feedback of the world coming at you is. So there needs to be a certain level of pragmatism and a certain level of recognition of where we are at with an optimistic mindset. That's a very different space of being in. That is why, for our mind to be balanced, three things have to be working, not just our consciousness. It needs to be our cognition, our discernment. So if you're purely reliant on positivity, your discernment has gone to sleep. So you want to
Yep.
make sure your discernment is working just as well as your emotional centers, which is your heart. Then your consciousness, which I know, Regina, you've heard me talk about this a few times. Our consciousness has three layers to it. It's our conscious, our subconscious, and our unconscious layers. And these three are coded with all kinds of information. So the goal is to get the conscious layer to open up so it's aware of all three layers. And so everything has to be talking to each other. If you're reliant on one and we ignore the rest, we are blinding ourselves from what could possibly be.
So beautiful. All right. Well, that is about all the time that we have for today. What an amazing episode. I mean, like, I have a whole page of notes. There were 22 bombs dropped and a beautiful model that was laid out in front of us today. So thank you, Gayathri. And we'd love to talk to you. So all of our links can be found in the show notes. All you got to do is follow us on this journey. You can follow us on YouTube and most social platforms. And of course, wherever you get your podcasts. We'd also love a review or one of those thumbs up on YouTube or one of those 5-star things, whatever you got, wherever you're listening. Give us the thing, do the thing, help us sisters out, help the sisters out. There's 3 of us on here today. And reach out to us if you want to be a guest and let us know your desired topic. We'll chat with you and let you know if it's a good fit. So I guess with that, ladies, we'll say cheers.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.